At this point, I would like to turn this symposium over to the President and CEO of Houston Methodist, Dr. Mark Boom. If you could join us at the podium.
Thank you, Beta, and thank you to everybody for being here today, and thank you to all of our presenters and faculty. I know this has been a very rewarding day, and it's exciting to me to see the energy here and what's been accomplished. I think back to just a couple of years ago when we had our first of these conferences, and we've already come a very long way. My main function here this afternoon is I get the distinct privilege of introducing our distinguished guest, former First Lady, as well as founder of Texan by Nature, Laura Bush. Mrs. Bush was born a little west of here in Midland, Texas, taught pretty near here in Houston, where she was actually a public school librarian, which is a really neat career. And of course, a beloved First Lady of both the state of Texas and the United States. And for decades, if you look at this really is a wonderful continuation, I guess, of decades of wonderful work looking to enhance and preserve and protect our natural resources. As First Lady, with the platform she had, she initiated many conservation-oriented programs. A couple of those included Preservation America, which safeguarded and restored cultural and natural resources. First Bloom, which would help increase knowledge of native and invasive plants, and the Marine Debris Initiative, which helped clear up our waterways and our oceans. She's a hiking and outdoors enthusiast. I get that. I love to hike. That's one of my favorite things to do, and loves encouraging Americans to enjoy the wonderful national parks that we are so privileged to have. And actually, as honorary chair of the National Park Foundation, I think she's visited more than 30 and has been a key person in making sure that we preserve and enhance those parks. In fact, in 2006, she announced President Bush's designation of the largest single area dedicated to conservation in the history of the United States, the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands Marine National Monument, and has served as a true role model, in fact, helping plan then the George W. Bush Presidential Center and partnering to develop the 15-acre urban park there. That, of course, is with a Methodist institution at Southern Methodist, a little connection there, and is the first center, the first presidential library that received LEED Platinum certification. So putting the money where the mouth is, essentially there. So the leader and inspiring person I'm introducing today embodies all of these characteristics that I know will push our vision forward, and it is my privilege to introduce former First Lady Laura Bush. Let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you all. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Dr. Boom. Thank you for your leadership of Houston Methodist, and thanks especially for your commitment to this Center for Health and Nature. I want to recognize again that last panel. They really gave us the charge of what we want to leave here and start to work on next. So thanks to everybody that was on the last panel. You all were really terrific. When I was here last year for the launch of the Center for Health and Nature, my father-in-law, President George H.W. Bush, was a patient here at Methodist. Houston Methodist provided exceptional care for both my mother and father-in-law, and for that, Dr. Boom, I'm sincerely grateful. Thank you very much. As everyone knows, we lost them both last year. We celebrated their beautiful lives with services in Washington, D.C., and here in Houston. And then with President Bush and Barr, we traveled to College Station to their burial ground, their gravesite at the George H.W. Bush Presidential Library on the campus of Texas A&M. It was really a beautiful ceremony. We walked with President Bush's casket through 700 saluting Texas A&M cadets. It was really sweet. They have a very beautiful sort of rural gravesite because that campus is so large. And they had moved Robin, George's sister, who died when she was 4, from Greenwich, where she'd been buried, and so she's there with them there. We miss them, of course, and I'm sure that lots of people in Houston miss them as well. George and I believe that his parents showed us the way to age with grace. In Maine, my mother-in-law, Barbara Bush, walked her dogs on the beach every day, twice a day. There were 2 times, early in the morning and late in the afternoon, when dogs are allowed on the Kennebunkport Beach, so she did it both times a day. And then a couple of summers ago, she had to walk with a walker. And then her last summer, she couldn't walk on the beach, so she wildly drove her golf cart around Walker's Point with her little dogs running behind her for exercise. Barr once said, "For heaven's sake, enjoy life. Don't cry over things that were or things that aren't. Enjoy what you have now to the fullest." From George's parents, we've learned that all we know we have is now. So take advantage of your life as it is and walk on the beach every chance you get. Like many of you, I was inspired by the conservationists and naturalists in my life, including my mother-in-law, who was proud of her cottage garden in Kennebunkport, Maine. And as an only child growing up in West Texas, in Midland, which was not really what you would call green, since there were no native trees. Far from those cottage gardens in Maine, I spent summers there in Midland and then in El Paso with my grandparents, helping my Grammy work for hours in her little garden. And these are the kind of things she grew in El Paso: ocotillas, yuccas, asparagus, pomegranate trees in the harshest of those desert conditions. In Midland, I learned to love the outdoors from my mother, who was not, if she was not reading, she could be found outside. My mother was a knowledgeable, self-taught naturalist who remembered the name of every wildflower and was passionate about birds. Her fascination with bird watching began when I was 10, and she volunteered to be my Girl Scout leader, which involved helping us get our bird badges. We would sit outside Indian style with binoculars and wait for birds to swoop by. Each year, thousands of birds fly through Midland, and it was then that I learned that my city sits along a north-south migratory route. My mother became a devoted bird watcher, and as we drove around town together, she would point out the painted buntings and the hawks as they floated in the sky. The sky in Midland, without any trees to obscure it, is a flawless dome. The land doesn't pitch or rise, but remains perfectly flat. For as far back as I can remember, on spectacular summer nights, my mother would grab a blanket and we'd go outside to lie on the ground and gaze at the sky and watch the stars. And as we lay together on the hard grass, she would say, "Look up, Laura, look up." And it was then that I began to look up and look out across the vast landscapes so as not to miss the beauty around us. When George and I moved back to Texas from Washington, I helped found Texan by Nature with the group of friends and committed conservationists who are here on the front row with me. Last year, Texan by Nature partnered with Texas A&M and Houston Methodist to create the Center for Health and Nature, and I'm thrilled to be here today for this annual symposium. Lynn Scarlett, who's the head of public policy at the Nature Conservancy, said at our 2016 symposium that, and I quote, "Understanding the link between nature and health is important for improving our health. It also suggests that nature is not just nice, it's essential, and it deserves greater public and private sector investment." Gathered here today, we have health researchers, conservation experts, private landowners, CEOs, and loyal supporters. You are the essential group, the leaders in your communities who want to prove that the connection between health and nature truly makes people happier, healthier, and more prosperous. Earlier today, Joni mentioned some of the transformative developments that we've seen in the field of medicine. We all know that being outside in nature makes us feel good, but there actually is very little research to prove it. Then that's what we're beginning to do now. We're on the forefront of the next major leap, the Center for Health and Nature is making measurable progress to establish and leverage the link between nature, health, and to improve all lives. We heard some exciting concepts discussed today. Thanks to Doctors Lee, Stubbins, Newman, and Liu for your outstanding research driving the research connection between health and nature forward. And thanks to Dr. Menzers, Cash, Kermeyer, and Botniger for your summaries of the research already conducted and accepted at the center. And thank you to the Vision Panel for your insights into the state of health and nature research today. A special thanks to Florence Williams and Drs. David Berrigan and Perry Highstead. These authors and research are uncovering some very interesting facts. I was surprised to learn from Florence Williams' work that buildings with medium levels of vegetation experience 42% fewer crimes. And buildings with the most green views see 48% fewer property crimes and 56% fewer violent crimes than buildings with less greenery. If that is a difference we see in our everyday environment, imagine the impact nature can have in hospitals and the positive effects it can have on our mental and physical health. The relationship between nature and health is strong, and the Center for Health and Nature has the potential to discover life-changing and life-saving information. Much of the data you heard today will advance the research on health and nature significantly, and I'm grateful for your support for this important work. In the words of Dr. Howard Frumpkin, head of Our Planet, Our Health at Wellcome Trust, and I quote, "Nature contact brings many health benefits, from better birth outcomes to less depression to longer life expectancy, but the evidence isn't yet all in. We need just the kind of research this center will do, research that can guide practical public health strategies for years to come." As President Bush and Barbara Bush have taught us, all we know we have is now. The choices we make now will shape the world for the next generation. And that's why I thank each one of you for joining us today for our annual Center for Health and Nature Symposium. Your participation ensures that our children and grandchildren will experience the joys and benefits of being in nature so they can live happy, healthy, and active lives. Thank you all each very, very much. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Mark.